Distinguished guests, please rise for the posting of the colors.
Chers invités, veuillez vous lever pour l'affichage des couleurs.
Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. Lead them straight and true. Give strength to their arms, stoutness to their hearts, steadfastness in their faith.
June 6, 1944, D-Day. France has been occupied by Nazi Germany for almost 4 years. Some countries have suffered under their sinister yoke even longer. Unfathomable crimes were committed against whole peoples. But the burdens of nations can only be lifted by the efforts of individuals. Early that morning, Lieutenant John Spaulding, a 29-year-old sports writer from Owensboro, Kentucky, assisted by 25-year-old Sergeant Philip Strachik, a truck driver from New Jersey, commanded 32 men in E Company, 16th Infantry, as part of the first wave onto Omaha Beach, where more than 2,400 men would be killed or wounded that same day. Navigating rough waters, they took on machine gun, mortar, and artillery fire, but were able to make it out of the water and across the beach, bypassing a German machine gun emplacement 100 yards to their left that was mercilessly cutting down men from F Company. Their radio not working, and cut off from the rest of E Company, Lieutenant Spaulding and Sergeant Strachik led their platoon to the base of the bluff behind the cover of a demolished building. Pinned down by gunners from above, they took stock of their situation. "We could still see no one to the right," Lieutenant Spaulding said. "We didn't know what had become of the rest of E Company. Back in the water, boats were in flame. I saw a tank ashore knocked out. After a couple of looks back, we decided we wouldn't look back anymore." Taking relentless fire from above, avoiding landmines underfoot, Lieutenant Spaulding, Sergeant Strachik, and their men pushed upward. They reached the top and overran the machine gun nest, opening a path for the men below to follow. Fighting onward, they continued along the bluff, attacking enemy fortifications from the rear, clearing trenches and pillboxes, and taking prisoners. Lieutenant Spaulding, Sergeant Strachik, and the rest of their platoon secured a pathway for the thousands of men bottled up on the beach behind them. The advance could now continue. But military prowess and tactical skill like this were only part of what propelled America's sons to the top of that bluff and beyond. There was something more. In the words of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, they had embarked on a great crusade, and the hope and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere marched with them. That great crusade would eventually free the tyrannized peoples of Europe and help save the world as we know it. And it all began right here, on June 6th, 1944.
Distinguished guests, please rise, if you are able, for the arrival of the official party.
Chers invités, veuillez vous lever si vous le pouvez pour l'arrivée de la délégation officielle.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States of America and Dr. Biden, accompanied by the President of the French Republic and Mrs. Macron.
Chers invités, le président des États-Unis d'Amérique et la Dr Biden, accompagnés du président de la République française et de Madame Macron.
Distinguished guests, please remain standing for the national anthem of the French Republic, followed by the national anthem of the United States of America.
Chers invités, veuillez rester debout pour l'hymne national de la République française, suivi de l'hymne national des États-Unis d'Amérique.
Distinguished guests, please remain standing for the invocation delivered by Chaplain Karen Meeker.
Chers invités, veuillez rester debout pour l'invocation prononcée par l'aumônière Karen Meeker.
Let us bow our heads in humble reverence and solemn remembrance. Let us pray. God, when you needed someone to defend freedom, you made a soldier. When you needed someone to fight tyranny, you created a Marine. When you needed someone to protect the skies, you made an airman. When you needed someone to guard the seas, you made the sailor. And to patrol the shores, the Coast Guard. When you needed to send someone brave and true, it has always been and always will be the men and women of the armed forces. When the world needed heroes, you called the greatest generation to courage, and their answer still echoes in the soul of the nation. Shine your eternal light upon those whose gravestones encircle us as silent sentinels, reminding us of the price of liberty. Comfort with your abiding presence those who mourn empty tables and empty chairs, of those who gave their best hopes for our brighter tomorrows. Be our witness, O God, as we stand on this hallowed ground, consecrated in blood, that we will be devoted to the preservation of peace with the same determination as these here who fought fourscore years ago. As storm clouds gather on the horizon once again, rise up, O God, the next greatest generation, to meet every challenge with an unbreakable resolve to do what is right and good in your sight. Not counting the cost, but weighing the unfinished work of freedom, a vision where all people can pursue the life to which you have created them. May it be so, I pray, in your holy name. Amen and amen.
Distinguished guests, please take your seats.
Chers invités, veuillez prendre place.
Please welcome the Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission, Charles K. Djou.
Veuillez accueillir le secrétaire de la Commission américaine des monuments de guerre, Charles K. Djou.
Thank you. President and First Lady Biden, President and Madame Macron, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Battle Monuments Commission, Normandy American Cemetery. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. D-Day is the hinge of history. It is here we reflect the very best of America's values. When America sends its young, its brave, its finest, we do not send them to fight for a king or a crown. We do not fight for a sect or a denomination. We do not fight for a motherland or a fatherland. No, and we never, ever fight for conquest or plunder or enslavement of another people. When America is at its best, America sends its young, its brave, its finest to fight for simple, humble values. The values of freedom, liberty, and democracy. And when the job is done, when the mission is accomplished, when the tyrant is taken down and democracy is stood up, America does something unique in the history of mankind. We go home. All that America asks for in return for the sacrifice of our young, our brave, and our finest are a few small plots of land to bury our dead. All of you are seated here in one of those small plots of land. That is why this date, June 6th, this place, Normandy, and this ceremony here is so important. It is a reminder to all of us of the true cost of war and the real price of freedom. It is a price that we paid on D-Day 80 years ago. It is a price that we remind all authoritarian dictators today that if necessary, we will pay that price again to ensure the success of freedom. And that is ultimately why France knows, the United States knows, and we know. La France connaît, et les États-Unis connaissent, et nous connaissons that the world's most powerful weapon system is not a T-72 manned by mercenaries. It is not a Fujian aircraft carrier patrolling artificial islands. It is not a suicide terrorist killing and slaughtering innocents. No. The world's most powerful weapon system was, is, and shall forever be a free people willing to fight for freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here. Thank you for remembering here. Thank you for renewing your faith in freedom. Je voudrais dire merci beaucoup. May God bless each and every one of you, France and the United States of America.
Distinguished guests, the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron.
Chers invités, le président de la République française, Emmanuel Macron.
Monsieur le Président des États-Unis, cher Joe Biden, Madame la Première Dame, Dr. Jill Biden, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos grades et qualités, Messieurs les combattants du débarquement, chers vétérans, Mesdames et Messieurs, ces humbles tombes blanches qui sont juste là, à portée de main derrière vous, sont un des lieux les plus émouvants de France. On y sent vibrer l'histoire, l'héroïsme des morts et celui des vivants. On y lit la grandeur d'un peuple prêt à mourir sur un sol qui n'est pas le sien, pour une cause qui est la sienne. Il est un sanctuaire où se transmet comme un flambeau la mémoire inlassable du jour J. Car ici est le lien séculaire entre nos deux nations, nos deux républiques qui se renouvellent et s'affermissent. Un lien de sang versé pour la liberté. Ce lieu comme cette cérémonie disent notre dette à l'égard de ceux qui sont tombés, comme de ceux qui ont survécu. Et vous voilà, aujourd'hui, à nos côtés. À l'été 1944, vous aviez 20 ans à peine, parfois moins. Vous aviez une famille, des amis, une fiancée, une femme, parfois des enfants. Vous aviez des rêves, des projets, un avenir. Et vous avez tout quitté, franchi l'océan et débarqué sur les côtes de France il y a 8 décennies de cela. Vous avez tout quitté et pris tous les risques pour notre indépendance, pour notre liberté. Cela, nous ne l'oublions pas. Merci. Vous êtes venu ici et vous avez rejoint notre guerre pour y faire basculer l'histoire. Oui. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. Hilbert Margol, débarqué à Marseille en janvier 1945, remontant l'Europe de la Provence à la Pologne, jusqu'à ce jour dramatique où, avec votre frère jumeau, Howard, vous avez découvert les charniers de Dachau. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. John Wardle, fantassin auquel votre courage a valu une blessure à Jürgenwald, en Allemagne, en pleine bataille. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. Robert Pedigo, pour combattre avec votre escadrille de Saint-Laurent à l'Allemagne. Vous êtes venu ici, Monsieur Calvin Schreiner, qui avait participé à l'opération Dragoon depuis le sud de la France et passé les derniers mois de guerre à réparer nos hôpitaux, nos voies ferrées, nos routes. Vous êtes venu ici, Monsieur Edward Berthold, devenu avec vos 35 missions de combat un véritable fléau des nazis, dont vous bombardiez inlassablement les centres névralgiques, tout comme Edwin Cottrell, pour qui j'ai une pensée aujourd'hui et qui aurait dû être des vôtres. Vous êtes venu ici, Monsieur Dominic Critelli, pour libérer le continent où vous étiez né. Et vous, Mr. Bill Casassa, avec cette force d'âme exceptionnelle qui vous a permis de tenir 171 jours de combat continu face à l'ennemi. Vous êtes venu, Mr. Victor Chaney, débarqué en juillet sur la plage d'Utah Beach pour libérer la Normandie, puis Angers, puis Reims. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. Raymond Glansberg, vous, l'enfant du Bronx, combattant le long de la Moselle et des Vosges. Et vous, Mr. Richard Stewart, pour faire passer nos messages à travers les frontières de la France, la Belgique, l'Allemagne. Vous êtes venu ici, Mr. John Kenyon, qui avait vécu la Normandie, la libération de Paris, le Maroc, évacuant nos blessés, transportant nos hommes et notre matériel. Vous êtes venus ici. Le monde libre avait besoin de chacun de vous, et vous avez répondu présent, comme vos frères d'armes, encore vivants, comme vos frères d'armes, alors tombés. Here you came to join your efforts with our own soldiers and to make France a free nation. And you are back here today, at home, if I may say. Rangers, lead the way. Telle fut l'exclamation de Norman Cotta, sous le feu de la mitraille à ses hommes, sous la pluie d'obus. Vous êtes venus ici, alors vous voilà à jamais chez vous, sur le sol de France, et nous n'oublions pas. À vous, hommes de la Great Generation, de nous enseigner à notre tour à être grands, à lutter pour la paix et la liberté du monde. À nos côtés, vous avez fait cette guerre et nous l'avons gagnée. Alors pour vous qui êtes là, et pour vos camarades qui ne le sont plus, et dont vous portez la mémoire en ce jour, pour votre bravoure au service de notre liberté, j'ai l'honneur de vous remettre les insignes de chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Merci.
Distinguished guests, the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron, will now present the National Order of the Legion of Honor. Established in 1802 by Napoleon Bonaparte, the Legion of Honor is France's highest decoration and recognizes eminent services to the French Republic. This distinguished award to these American veterans acknowledges their service and participation in the liberation of France during the Second World War.
Chers invités, le président de la République française, Emmanuel Macron, va maintenant présenter l'Ordre national de la Légion d'honneur. Créée en 1802 par Napoléon Bonaparte, la Légion d'honneur est la plus haute décoration française et récompense les services éminents rendus à la République française. Cette distinction décernée à ces vétérans américains reconnaît leur service et leur participation à la libération de la France pendant la Seconde Guerre mondiale.
Monsieur Hilbert Margol, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur John Wardle, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Robert Pedigo, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Calvin China, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Edward Berthold, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Dominique Critelli, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Bill Cassasa, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Victor Chani, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Raymond Glansberg, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur Richard Stewart, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur. Monsieur John Kenyon, au nom de la République française, nous vous faisons chevalier de la Légion d'honneur.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin III, Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
Chers invités, veuillez accueillir l'honorable Lloyd J. Austin, troisième du nom, secrétaire à la Défense des États-Unis d'Amérique.
President Biden, Dr. Biden, President Macron, Mrs. Macron, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and above all, the veterans of World War II. I am honored to stand again at this hallowed place. We bow our heads to remember the more than 9,000 U.S. and Allied soldiers killed or wounded on D-Day by Hitler's forces. On behalf of the United States Department of Defense, I am here to give thanks, inadequate as that word may be. 80 years later, we thank the young Americans who took the beaches, who helped liberate France, and who helped free this continent from Nazi tyranny. We thank every Allied warrior who fought for freedom on June 6, 1944. And we thank the American and Allied veterans who have rallied once more on the shores of Normandy. Victors of D-Day, we are humbled by your presence. The young Americans who fought through the clamor and the chaos on D-Day have grown old or left us. And whenever a veteran of D-Day is gathered to his maker, in the fullness of time, after a long life lived in freedom, he wins a final victory over Hitler. You helped defeat what Churchill called a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalog of human crime. And you laid the foundation for a more just, free, and decent world. Together with our allies, we built peace out of war, a hard-headed peace, a peace renewed by constant commitment, a peace forged by the generation that won the bloodiest war in human history. And so our gratitude must never fade. Our memories must never dim, and our resolve must never fail. We still seek a world where aggression is a sin, and where human rights are sacred, and where all people can live in freedom. And so we must rally again to defend the open, post-war world of rules, rights, and responsibilities. Those rules protect us. Those rights define us. And those responsibilities summon us once more. At this hinge in history, we must again stand firm against aggression and tyranny. And as I said here last year, if the troops of the world's democracies could risk their lives for freedom then, surely the citizens of the world's democracy can risk our comfort for freedom now. So let us again uphold the spirit of D-Day. Let us again defend the principles that the Allied armies carried. And let us again thank the heroes of D-Day who kept freedom alive for us all. You saved the world. You saved the world, and we must only defend it. Gentlemen, we salute you. May God bless the American and Allied troops who fought here. May God bless the United States of America, and may God bless all who cherish human freedom. Thank you.
Papa, what was it like on D-Day?
We had no idea what we were going to do or before it would happen, but it was the beginning.
It was a very decisive battle for us because our mission was to establish ourselves on the beach.
But when we were on that boat, on that Higgins boat, everybody talked about the same thing, helping each other and not getting killed.
We started up this sandy area and we're
cemetery here in Colville. I think of the many men here that paid the ultimate price for the freedom of Europe.
young people want to know and need to know. Everybody I saw that I was glad to fight alongside them, they were willing to stand up. And not all of them came back.
And they all have a story to tell. And it's our responsibility to tell those stories. People will not be forgotten as long as we keep talking about them.
I am not a hero, I just did my job. The real heroes are laying here on the cemeteries. These are our heroes, and we should never forget them.
Distinguished guests, the 46th President of the United States of America, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Invité d'honneur, le 46e Président des États-Unis d'Amérique, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
The hour had nearly come. Monday, June 5th, 1944. The evil of Hitler's Third Reich was devastating the world. Nazi Germany had subjugated the once free nations of Europe through brute force, lies, and twisted ideology of racial superiority. Millions of Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Millions of others killed by bombs, bullets, bloody warfare. Hitler and those with him thought democracies were weak, that the future belonged to dictators. Here, on the coast of Normandy, the battle between freedom and tyranny would be joined. Here, on that June morning, the testing was at hand. President Macron, Mrs. Macron, Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, distinguished guests, most of all, our honored veterans who met that test at the ages, a test of ages to that moment, 80 years ago today. On behalf of the American people and as Commander-in-Chief, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy once more. All of you, God love you. Winston Churchill called what happened here, quote, the greatest, most complicated operation ever, end of quote. After years of planning, Operation Overlord was ready to launch just as soon as the weather turned. Across the choppy English Channel, the Supreme Commander of the Allies, Dwight D. Eisenhower, waited. The largest force ever of its kind, built by 12 nations. Men, guns, planes, naval craft of every description waited. The world, captive and free, waited. Finally, Eisenhower's forecasters said there was a window in the weather. It would open briefly on Tuesday, the 6th of June. The general weighed the options and gave the order. At dawn, the Allies would strike. The great crusade to free Europe from tyranny would begin. That night, General Eisenhower drove to the English town of Newbury to visit paratroopers of the 101st Airborne. There were men from all over America. It was estimated that 80% of them would be killed within hours. That was the estimate. But they were brave, they were resolute, and they were ready. One soldier told General Eisenhower, quote, "Don't worry, sir. The 101st is on the job. Everything will be taken care of." That's what he said. And because of their courage and their resolve, because the courage and resolve of their allies, it was taken care of. From the sea and sky, nearly 160,000 Allied troops descended on Normandy. Many, to state the obvious, never came home. Many survived that longest day, kept on fighting for months until victory was finally won. And a few, a notable band of brothers, are here with us today. Kenneth Blaine Smith is here. On that day, under heavy artillery fire, he operated a rangefinder and radar on the first American ship to arrive at Normandy's coast, providing direct gunfire support for the Rangers scaling the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc on their daring mission to take out the German batteries. Bob Gibson is here. He landed on Utah Beach about 10 hours after the invasion began. Bullets flying everywhere, tracers lighting up the sky. Bob drove an M4 tractor with anti-aircraft gun mounted on top, providing critical protection for the infantry against the German Air Force. On that day, and for many days after, he continued. Ben Miller is here, a medic with the 82nd Airborne. At 3 a.m. on June 6th, he and 13 other medics flew over the channel in a rickety glider. Its wings were ripped off by giant poles that the Germans buried halfway in the ground to stop them from landing. They crashed, but they survived. And they did their duty, dragging injured soldiers to safety, treating wounds, saving lives while the battle raged. Every soldier who stormed the beach, who dropped by parachute or landed by glider, every sailor who manned the thousands of ships and landing craft, every aviator who destroyed German-controlled airfields, bridges, and railroads, all were backed by other brave Americans, including hundreds of thousands of people of color and women who courageously served despite unjust limitations on what they could do for their nation. Lewis Brown is here, part of the Red Ball Express, a truck convoy made up of mostly African-American drivers. They landed in Normandy in the wake of D-Day. They rushed supplies to the rapidly advancing front lines. Woody Woodhouse is here, members of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, who flew over 15,000 sorties during the war. Marjorie Stone is here. She enlisted in the women's branch of the Naval Reserve, became an aircraft mechanic, spent the war keeping American planes and pilots in the air. Theirs has always been the story of America. Just walk the rows of this cemetery as I have. Nearly 10,000 heroes buried side by side, officers and enlisted, immigrants and native-born, different races, different faiths, but all Americans. All served with honor when America and the world needed them most. Millions back home did their part as well. From coast to coast, Americans found countless ways to pitch in. They understood our democracy is only as strong as all of us make it together. The men who fought here became heroes, not because they were the strongest or toughest or fiercest, although they were, but because they were given an audacious mission, knowing, every one of them knew, the probability of dying was real. But they did it anyway. They knew, beyond any doubt, there are things that are worth fighting and dying for. Freedom is worth it. Democracy is worth it. America is worth it. The world is worth it. Then, now, and always. The war in Europe didn't end for another 11 months. But here, the tide turned in our favor. Here, we proved the forces of liberty are stronger than the forces of conquest. Here, we proved that the ideals of our democracy are stronger than any army or combination of armies in the entire world. We proved something else here as well, the unbreakable unity of the Allies. Here with us are men who served alongside the Americans that day, wearing different flags on their arms, but fighting with the same courage for the same purpose. What the Allies did together 80 years ago far surpassed anything we could have done on our own. It was a powerful illustration of how alliances, real alliances, make us stronger. A lesson that I pray we Americans never forget. Together we won the war. We rebuilt Europe, including our former enemies. It was an investment in what became shared and a prosperous future. We established NATO, the greatest military alliance in the history of the world. And over time, you got it, it is. And over time, we brought more nations into NATO, the NATO alliance, including the newest members, Finland and Sweden. Today, NATO stands at 32 countries strong, and NATO is more united than ever, and even more prepared to keep the peace, deter aggression, defend freedom all around the world. America has invested in our alliances and forged new ones, not simply out of altruism, but out of our own self-interest as well. America's unique ability to bring countries together is an undeniable source of our strength and our power. Isolationism was not the answer 80 years ago, and is not the answer today. We know the dark forces that these heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and greed, the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by force, these are perennial. The struggle between a dictatorship and freedom is unending. Here in Europe, we see one stark example. Ukraine has been invaded by a tyrant bent on domination. Ukrainians are fighting with extraordinary courage, suffering great losses, but never backing down. They've been inflicted on the Russian aggressors. They've suffered tremendous losses in Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded. Nearly 1 million people have left Russia because they can no longer see a future in Russia. The United States and NATO and a coalition of more than 50 countries standing strong with Ukraine. We will not walk away. Because if we do, Ukraine will be subjugated, and it will not end there. Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened. And make no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine, to see if we let this illegal aggression go unchecked. We cannot let that happen. To surrender to bullies, to bow down to dictators, is simply unthinkable. Were we to do that, it means we'd be forgetting what happened here in these hallowed beaches. Make no mistake, we will not bow down. We will not forget. Let me end with this. History tells us freedom is not free. If you want to know the price of freedom, come here to Normandy. Come to Normandy and look. Go to the other cemeteries in Europe where our fallen heroes rest. Go back home to Arlington Cemetery. Tomorrow, I will pay respects at Pointe du Hoc. Go there as well and remember, the price of unchecked tyranny is the blood of the young and the brave. In their generation, in their hour of trial, the Allied forces of D-Day did their duty. Now the question for us is, in our hour of trial, will we do ours? We're living in a time when democracy is more at risk across the world than any point since the end of World War II, since these beaches were stormed in 1944. Now we have to ask ourselves, will we stand against tyranny, against evil, against crushing brutality of the iron fist? Will we stand for freedom? Will we defend democracy? Will we stand together? My answer is yes, and only can be yes. We're not far off from the time when the last living voices of those who fought and bled on D-Day will no longer be with us. So we have a special obligation. We cannot let what happened here be lost in the silence of the years to come. We must remember it, must honor it, and live it. And we must remember the fact that they were heroes here that day does not absolve us from what we have to do today. Democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must preserve it, defend it, and fight for it. That's the test of the ages. In memory of those who fought here, died here, literally saved the world here, let us be worthy of their sacrifice. Let us be the generation that when history is written about our time, In 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 years from now, it'll be said, when the moment came, we met the moment. We stood strong. Our alliances were made stronger. We saved democracy in our time as well. Thank you very much, and may God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, in honor of the veterans gathered with us today and those commemorated at this hallowed ground, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Miyamasu will now read the Watch.
Chers invités, en l'honneur des vétérans réunis avec nous aujourd'hui et de ceux qui sont commémorés dans ce lieu sacré, la capitaine de corvette Catherine Miyamasu va maintenant lire The Watch, la garde.
When a sailor retires, it is traditional that a younger service member read the Watch. Today, we want to read the Watch for all World War II veterans here today, both behind us and all around us. 80 years ago, these sailors stood the watch. While some of us were in our bunks at night, these soldiers stood the watch. While some of us were in school learning our trade, Marines, airmen, and coasties stood the watch. Yes, even before some of us were born into this world. The men behind me and their brothers and sisters who lay before me stood the watch. In those years, when the storm clouds of war were seen brewing on the horizon of history, they stood the watch. Many times, they would cast an eye ashore and see family standing there, needing guidance and help, needing that hand to hold in those hard times. But still, they stood the watch. They stood the watch 80 years ago. They stood the watch so that we, our families, and our fellow countrymen and women can sleep soundly in safety each and every night, knowing that these veterans stood the watch. Today, we are here to say, World War II veterans, the watch stands relieved. Relieved by those you have trained, guided, and led. American World War II veterans, you stand relieved. We have the watch.
Distinguished guests, please rise if you are able, as we salute those memorialized here at Normandy American Cemetery, and remain standing for the playing of La Sonnerie aux Morts and taps, and the departure of the official party.
Chers invités, veuillez vous lever si vous le pouvez pour saluer ceux qui sont commémorés ici au cimetière américain de Normandie et rester debout pour l'interprétation de la sonnerie aux morts et de taps et pour le départ de la délégation officielle.